Greetings, Earthlings. No, I am not really an alien. I'm just a guy in an alien mask. But I would like to speak to you about something that I really do think is out of this world. And that something is magnetism. Specifically, I want to explain and show you simple and repeatable experiments which will prove that common permanent magnets can be used to physically amplify any input force. This is significant because specific arrangements of permanent magnets can be used to greatly increase the amount of power and energy available to us to use, and it will do so without any pollution. I will discuss more about that later. I will ultimately go into a lot of science involving different topics, so I have made 2 videos to cover it all. The first video tries to generally explain magnetism and its properties in common terms and using analogies that everyone can follow. I will then show a simple experiment confirming my hypothesis. Afterwards, I try to answer objections and talk about some of the history behind this experiment, as well as some of the implications regarding the experiment. What this is not is me demonstrating some abstract invention or talking about impossible to understand theories. Instead, I hope to teach people the basic ABCs of magnetism and present it in a basic and understandable way so that they can better understand and use this knowledge for themselves. If at any time any portion of these videos or the words that I say upset you or you feel angry or threatened, then I request that you please turn off the video and go do something else. Just write me off and don't give it a second thought. First, let me discuss what magnetism is. Magnetism is a 100% quantum phenomenon. This puts it in the same category as gravity, string theory, quarks, and other subatomic phenomena. However, no one truly understands what magnetism is, and there are really only theories. I find it helpful to imagine that magnetism is caused by tiny subatomic packets of energy which are much smaller than photons and move much faster than the speed of light. This is of course controversial, as Einstein is often quoted as saying that the speed of light is the maximum speed of anything in the universe. What Einstein actually says is that the maximum speed of anything is a purely massless particle, and whether or not a photon has mass is debatable. Light, along with X-rays and gamma rays, are photons, or electromagnetic waves. The current theory of light and photons is that magnetism acts upon some small subatomic particle, similar to an electron, in such a way as to make it oscillate at a certain frequency and energy, such as is shown in this illustration. The light photon is contained within itself. I believe that a photon has mass, as I believe a mass is needed to generate the magnetism. Basically, a magnetic field is the magnetic force separated from the mass that creates it. Alone, it is exactly 1/2 of the equation of light. Photons and other electromagnetic wave particles are basically tiny subatomic oscillating magnets traveling at extremely high velocities, up to the speed of light. A permanent magnet is in comparison a large supraatomic source of a seemingly static magnetic field. When made to oscillate in the presence of an electrical conductor, such as copper, it can produce energy by moving the electrons in the conductor. This is how almost all of the energy we use is produced. There is a well-known phenomenon called quantum entanglement that Einstein himself called spooky, in which subatomic particles communicate with one another faster than the speed of light. It is commonly explained as a particle basically being able to be in two places at once. This sort of duality is profoundly present in magnetism. The phenomenon has never really been fully explained and is difficult to truly comprehend. According to Einsteinian physics, magnetism would be explained by a sort of space-time warp similar to his theory of gravity. Some might even say the magnetism doesn't really flow, and instead is simply an ambient field in the space-time continuum. Or is this an illusion caused by something moving much faster than anyone ever thought possible? Regardless of exactly how it works and what it is, I feel like looking at different theories might be useful in the same way that Newton's theory of gravity is simpler and easier to understand than Einstein's theory of gravity, although Einstein's theories are more accurate in some high-level physics calculations. Does a magnetic field, when it leaves the mass of the magnet, have any mass at all, or is it completely without mass? Is a magnetic field pure energy? Are the speed of the magnetic field and the influence of the field limited to the speed of light? How can we truly explain and understand the duality inherent in magnetism? These are questions that I would like to know the answer to, but do not currently have. One thing is certain, we need better answers and more research needs to be done so that we can properly understand the force of magnetism and how it relates to Einstein's theory of relativity, as well as to gravity, string theory, and other quantum forces. Although no one knows or fully understands what a magnetic field is made of, magnetism does have many observable physical properties that we can measure and utilize. Magnetism will either pass through or directly interact with every material or element known to man. You can see it sticking to a thin piece of steel. Here you can see it will pass right through wood. Magnetism will also pass right through human flesh. Contrast this to light photons. There are many materials and elements that will block light photons. Intuitively, this would indicate to me that whatever causes magnetism is likely a particle much smaller than a light photon. I can even imagine magnetism as a simple tiny energy packet traveling faster than the speed of light. At least that is how I prefer to imagine it. Magnetism is a force. If I put these magnets on my finger with the opposite poles facing, then they will exert a force on my finger. I can actually feel the pressure on my finger. This force is binary in nature. If I place them same poles facing each other, they will repel each other with the exact same force as the attracting force. Now this is true for any symmetrically shaped magnet. Let us look at a visual representation of the magnetic flux and lines of force. You can see the force is both binary and circular in nature. If we could visually look at the 3D magnetic field of this little spherical magnet, it would look a bit like this donut. It's basically toroidal in shape. And if we cut a toroid in half, we see that it is basically the symbol for infinity. I do not feel like this is coincidental at all. I would posit that magnetism is inherently transcendental and basically transcends time and space as we know and understand it. Traditionally, magnetism is shown as a force and is measured in measurements called Gauss. Gauss measures the intensity of the magnetic field. If we could see the magnetism with our eyes, magnets would look like glowing orbs like you see here. The colors you see are representations of Gauss, or the measure of magnetic intensity. Magnets do not emit photons like light bulbs, but instead have magnetic energy constantly flowing through and around the magnet. There's also a measurement called the pull force. The pull force is the force needed to initially directly separate two magnets. The force of magnetism is a logarithmic force, like you see here. This is the graph of the pull force. This happens to be logarithmic because the magnet particles very quickly dissipate in their path to return to the other side as soon as they leave the magnet. Another important measurement is a magnet's shear force. The shear force is the force needed to separate two magnets, or a magnet to an arm plate, by shearing them apart perpendicular to their poles. The shear force is significantly less than the pull force. The shear force of two magnets is right around 30% of the pull force. Now this is the one property of magnetism that is important to understand in order to understand how we can use magnets to amplify an input force. And that is that the shear force of magnets is much less than the pull force. How do you separate two strong magnets? You always shear them apart. You do not pull them apart. The shear force of two magnets is always far less than its pull force. This simple scientific and easily demonstrable fact is the fundamental reason why we can use permanent magnets to amplify force. I will show you how we can use the properties of magnets to amplify a force shortly. Magnetism can be difficult to wrap your head around, so it is useful to understand how it works using analogs so that we can visualize it better. Magnetism exists because a material that is magnetic has the electrons in their outer shell aligned in a specific way. This causes them to move the hypothetical magnet particle forward. I feel that it is useful to compare the atoms in a magnet to little fans. Each atom in the magnet will move the magnet particle along like a little fan. It then continues to be blown along until it escapes the magnet. However, the full magnet is actually more like a fan enclosed in a sphere. This is because the magnet is a closed system, like a fan, enclosed in a sphere, where the particles blown out the front return to the back of the fan as soon as they can. If you look at a person blowing a ball with air, see how it is similar to two repelling magnets. However, a relatively small magnet can repel many pounds of force. Imagine how strong a person would have to blow to do the same thing. It would be impossible. How is such a strong force emitted from such a little thing? Well, we should keep in mind that all matter contains a tremendous amount of energy. Matter itself is ultra-concentrated energy. Have you ever heard of Einstein's famous E=mc² equation? What it says is that only 1 gram of matter, which is not a lot. This little magnet here weighs 1 gram, and there are 28.4 grams in an ounce. And yet, this would light up a 100-watt light bulb for 30,000 years, or be the equivalent of over a 20 kiloton nuclear blast if it were converted to 100% pure energy. That is bigger than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima in World War II. Basically, what we see in a permanent magnet is a little bit of that energy flows out of, around, and back into the permanent magnet constantly. This energy only reacts with other magnets and certain other materials. With most materials, this energy simply passes through the material as if it were not there. To me, when I hold a magnet in my hand, and I imagine the forces flowing through and around it, and the profound duality that exists within it, it's almost like holding a little piece of the sun. In fact, the sun is also a gigantic magnet, and solar flares are caused by the frequent collisions of the many colossal magnetic fields within the sun. That much power and potential truly lies within magnetism. The truth is that magnetism plays as much of a role in the creation and shaping of all of the galaxies and stars of the universe as much as gravity. It's not just something you use to stick stuff to your refrigerator. Now, the first thing I thought of when I realized the seeming potential of permanent magnets is that it sure sounds promising, but can magnets really be made to do any sort of work on their own? Is it possible to capture the energy that is constantly flowing from one pole of the magnet to the other? Or is this all just a fantasy and a delusion? If we imagine a self-powered fan and a glass bubble, all we would need to do is put a wind generator in the bubble and we could capture that energy. And a magnet is like a fan in a sphere that is always on. So if we could do that to the magnet, then we could capture all the energy we could ever need. However, a fan blade pushes air molecules, and magnetism is a quantum force. So we can't capture magnetism with any sort of a fan because magnetism flows through and interacts with everything on a subatomic level in a fundamentally different way than air molecules interact with matter. What we can do, however, is set up a specific configuration of magnets to capture that force. Let me now show you a simple and easily repeatable experiment that demonstrates this. So now, let me show you the proof. Here is a permanent magnet piston. Here is a counterweight magnet. Here is a fixed anchor magnet. This is the piston magnet. And at the bottom is the trigger magnet. Let me take out the piston to show you a little bit more detail. Here you can see that the position of the anchor magnet is fixed, and the piston magnet is attached to the counterweight magnet. The counterweight magnet is repulsed from the anchor magnet. And here you can see the piston magnet is attracted to the trigger magnet. When the trigger magnet is underneath the piston magnet, the counterweight magnet will be pulled towards the anchor magnet, thereby storing the full force of the trigger and the piston magnet. Watch how I cannot pull apart the trigger and the piston magnet here. However, when counterbalanced, the two are easily pulled apart. The force of the attraction can be almost completely stored and offset by the counterweight and anchor magnet. The trigger magnet can be moved perpendicular to the piston, thereby releasing over 3 times more energy than is used to move the trigger magnet. Again, this is because the shear force is 30% of the pull force. The shear force equals the pull force times 0.3. Or another way of saying that is the pull force equals the shear force times 3.33. The actual pull force required in this specific example is right around 40 pounds. However, the shear force is only around 12 pounds, which I can easily pull with my fingers. I can actually do this with only one finger, and I can do it all day long. Here in this graph, the top curve is the actual force released by the counterweight magnet and anchor magnet, and the bottom curve is the input shear force. You can clearly see the input force is amplified by more than 3 times. Even after accounting for friction and any other variables, there is clearly a tremendous amplification present that will allow the piston to carry a load. This is a simple fact that can be proven with this simple experiment. Again, this is an easily repeatable and demonstrable experiment, and that's the true hallmark of any legitimate and true science or invention. What needs to be done next is that the force required to pull the trigger magnet can be matched up with its own counterweight and anchor magnets. And in this way, the amplification will be much greater than the 3 times, because the initial trigger force required will itself be offset and decreased, but the same load can be placed on the piston. In order to carry a load, this will have to be made out of something sturdier than acrylic plastic, but it would be very simple to do this. Also, the exact load that can be placed on the piston needs to be calculated so it can be connected to an appropriate existing generator. The extra force of 2 or more of these pistons can then be converted to a rotary force with the use of a crankshaft, and that can be used to power any existing generator. So existently, a much smaller motor can be used as an actuator to power a much more powerful generator. Any objections to what I am presenting here simply reflects a misunderstanding of the physical properties of magnetism and of physical science. One claim will be that the magnets will quickly lose their power when operating in the configurations I have shown. This is not true, as magnets will only lose their ability to generate a magnetic field when the outer shell of their electrons of the magnet lose their orientation. This can be caused by heat or trauma, but not by magnets simply being magnets. There are working permanent magnets that have been used for many, many decades in large industrial generators that have not been exposed to any conditions fundamentally different to what they will be exposed to here, and they still generate power after many decades. people will also bring up Newton's laws of motion. One thing you need to understand is that Newton based his principles on the force of gravity. Gravity is a quantum force similar to magnetism, but which operates on a much different and larger scale. Magnetism, and what I am proposing, does actually follow these laws, but it acts on a much different scale than gravity, and that may confuse some people who are used to thinking about the laws of physics and physical science mainly as applied to gravity. The truth is that what we are doing does not break any laws of physics. In fact, it reinforces them. Basically, imagine a 100-pound weight that is sitting on a spring that holds 100 pounds of force. Now imagine being able to simply switch gravity on and off. The weight would bounce up and down, and we would be able to use that motion and weight to turn a generator and create electricity. Now when we shear a counterbalanced trigger magnet from a piston magnet, we are effectively doing this. We are turning the gravity, which in this case is actually magnetism, on and off. Because of the simple fact that the shear force is inherently significantly less than the pull force, there is a load that can be placed on the piston. There will be people who accuse me of trying to promote some free energy scam, but this is not free energy. Rather, it is extremely cheap and clean energy, vastly cheaper and cleaner than all current forms of energy production. The iron, neodymium, and boron required still have to be mined and manufactured into permanent magnets. Fortunately, these are all cheap and abundant elements. Then, the permanent magnet engine will have to be made and distributed, or the energy has to be distributed. So people will still be making money and getting paid. However, the cost, overhead, and pollution will be vastly reduced compared to all current forms of energy. And once created, these permanent magnet engines can be recharged and reused for thousands of years. People will also say that what I propose is impossible, as energy cannot be created or destroyed. But the truth is that what I propose neither creates nor destroys any energy at all. This is not what could be called a perpetual motion machine, any more than a water wheel in a stream is a perpetual motion machine. The water flows whether we capture any of the energy from it or not. The permanent magnet piston is no different than a water wheel capturing energy from the flow of water, except that instead it captures the energy from the flow of the magnetism. If the river ran dry, the water wheel would stop. And several hundred years without being recharged, a magnet piston would also stop. However, the permanent magnet engine can definitely be recharged every 100 years or so and continue to be used indefinitely. Another analogy would be a windmill. The permanent magnet piston does not create energy any more than a windmill creates energy. The windmill simply captures the energy of the flowing wind. And so what we are doing is simply capturing the flow of magnetism. I have made a second complementary video outlining a more detailed analogy and more detailed explanations of the permanent magnet engine than is given in this video. I imagine many people will ask themselves why, if this is all true, that it is not common knowledge at this point in time when science and technology seem so evolved. I believe it goes back to the beginning of the sciences of magnetism and atomic radiation. Pierre Curie was a leading physicist studying magnetism in the latter half of the 19th century. His work in magnetism was soon eclipsed by his and his wife Marie Curie's work in radioactivity. Radiation found immediate uses in X-rays and in the field of medicine, and was always high profile, While magnetism was relegated to its use in the electric generator, cathode rays tubes, communications, and a lot of other vitally important but somewhat banal behind the scenes and easily taken for granted applications. Science's main focus seems to have been in radiation and studying particles emitted from radioactive sources. This focus of research intensified during World War II with the development of nuclear weapons and continues to this day with massive supercolliders. Perhaps due to its inherent deadliness and danger, radiation has a higher status and profile than the useful but common and completely safe magnet. So I think one of the reasons why this hasn't been discovered is because safe is boring and danger is exciting. The unfortunate problem with pursuing this paradigm for so long is that radiation can be extremely toxic and lethal to all life. Nuclear fission is an extremely messy and toxic way to generate energy and electricity. It emits all sorts of nasty and lethal things. While it has uses and is fascinating science, many people have been seriously sickened or have died due to man-made radiation poisoning. With the proliferation of so many nuclear weapons in the world, there is a very real potential for the number of radiation victims to rise into the billions at some point. Death from radiation sickness is often a slow and agonizing death. It's a death I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Torture itself would be faster and a more humane death. In contrast, the electricity generated from the permanent magnet engine will be a completely safe, clean, and pure energy. Essentially, what we are doing is forcing the rotary force of the magnet into right angles to take advantage of the real physical properties of the quantum force of magnetism. The real physical property we are exploiting is that the shear force of magnetism is much less than its pull force. Basically, we are squaring the circular force of magnetism. This results in a new and transcendental power source. I was going to use this squaring the circle as my logo, and when I researched it a bit, I discovered that it has deep and profound meaning going back many thousands of years. It is how ancient geometers estimated the transcendental number pi. In fact, it can be used to mean finding a solution to a problem thought to be impossible. The ancient Egyptians, Babylonians, Indians, Chinese, and Greeks all approximated pi. The symbol of a compass and a square ruler has been used for many centuries to represent this transcendental paradigm. The paradigm is ubiquitous in ancient philosophy, knowledge, and science. However, it seems to have somehow been lost in the modern age of digital computers. What I am saying is that what we have to do now, if we want the circle of life to continue, is to stop, take a pause, turn the corner, turn the page, and only then will we be able to all move forward together. All of the knowledge that I have presented here is basic scientific fact, the basis of which goes back to the beginning of history and time itself. However, due to the dramatic paradigm change of energy production that the knowledge that I have shown you presents, a lot of people may feel that I am an existential threat to them. I assure you that this is not true. My only desire is to improve upon the existence and lives of all those on earth and all the creatures in it, with the spread of fundamental truths and scientific knowledge. The majority of our existing energy comes from the burning of fossil fuels and nuclear energy to drive steam turbines, which is a 300-year-old technology. The fundamental technology has not changed much. in a world where pollution and global warming is a threat, and we need to support increasing numbers of people, 300-year-old technology is just not going to cut it. We need to move into the 21st century and fully utilize the quantum force of magnetism if we are to continue to thrive. What this means is that we can soon have cars that will never need gas. A relatively small and inexpensive permanent magnet engine can be combined with existing batteries to produce electric cars that can travel long distances and charge themselves. We can have airplanes, helicopters, and boats that do not need any gas. We can both independently power our homes cheaply without any need for any power company, and we can also convert our existing megawatt generators to provide abundant, cheap, and clean power. We can live anywhere in the world and be supplied with cheap and clean power. We could build huge versions of this engine and power huge air conditioners and literally and directly cool the planet if we need to. We will all have enough power at our fingertips to basically improve the quality of all of our lives. Every village in Africa can have basic power for clean water and sanitation. It will be cost effective to create clean water from ocean water if needed. We will not be dependent on any vulnerable or aging energy grid. We will be completely resistant to any attacks on any such grid. This will be energy that will be usable in space and will make space travel and colonization a reality. It will usher in a new golden age of space exploration. It will bring about a new era of temperature-controlled indoor hydroponic agricultural systems and make them much more cost-effective. It will vastly decrease our dependence on arable land, as well as decrease our dependence on the sun. The only people that will really have to adapt are the people currently working in other energy industries such as coal or oil. However, the benefits of a clean, natural, and cheap energy are undeniable and will overall provide a tremendous boon to the world economy. For every job lost, there will undoubtedly be more gain. This will provide a boon to manufacturing and other industries as companies transition over to this new technology. I know that I have to appeal to those that are threatened by this new technology and convince them that there is no real future in clinging to such vastly outdated and inferior technology. And as a society, we have to move past that. It is my hope that this will bring relief to people everywhere, and that America can be a beacon to the world as an example of real, genuine, and sustainable prosperity. I hope that we can join together with all forces and peoples and religions of the world who seek independence, truth, peace, and harmony, and then we can begin to heal the planet and prosper together. The world needs forgiveness, forgiveness of past and forgiveness of debts. The world needs to heal. The world deserves to prosper. And America deserves the opportunity to once again lead by example. I cannot do it alone. I need your help. I need you to recognize the infinite power before you and the true power at our fingertips. I need you to recognize the infinite power and endless possibilities for the enrichment of humanity that you have been shown. Our dreams must always be bigger than our fears. I need your help to spread the word and share this so that we can make the future we all deserve a reality. If each person could just tell a few other people about this and share this knowledge, it will make all the difference in the world. We have important work to do and roles to play in this universal endeavor. We must collectively overcome the resistance that society naturally will have to this major change. But we owe this to ourselves. We owe this to our children. We owe this to the world, and we owe this to the future. Those who reject the simple scientific truth will ultimately be left in the dark.
When I'm beginning to see the light, beginning to see the light, a little wine in the morning, some breakfast at night, I'm beginning to see the light. Oh baby, I'm beginning to see the light. Well, I'm beginning to see the light. Some people work so very hard, but they never, ever get it right. Well, I'm beginning to see the light. Here we go again, playing the fool again. Here you go again, acting hard again. Well, I'm beginning to see the light. Oh, beginning to see the light. I wore my teeth in my hands so I can wake up the sound, wake up the hair of the night. I'm beginning to see the light. Whoa, whoa, baby, I'm beginning to see the light. I'm beginning to see the light. I had a dream, I met myself and everything was alright. I'm beginning to see the light. Here comes two of you. Which one will you choose? One is black and one is blue. Don't know just what to do. Hey now, now, baby, baby, I'm beginning to see the light. I'm beginning to see the light. Some people work so hard and they never do it right. Beginning to see the light. I'm beginning to see the light. Hey, baby, I'm beginning to see the light. There are problems in these times, but none of them are mine. I'm beginning to see the light. Here we go again. I thought that you were my friend. Here we go again. I thought that you were my friend. How does it feel to be loved? How does it feel to be loved? Oh, I really wanna know. How does it feel? How does it feel to be loved? How does it feel? How does it feel? La 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 la.